There are some days, no matter what Broadcom does, it seems like the market just doesn't like it. You're watching Textron, gang. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. It's Alan Shimel here. We've got a small but mighty gang to go talk about things today. We've got a bunch of people out. It's Christmas coming. Other people are at conferences, and I'm really happy though to have Kate Scarcella and Hope Lynch with me on the gang today. It's not an orphan gang where we have more women than men. So mark this down, and that's a good thing. It's Tuesday. I guess is it the week before Christmas at this point? Yeah, by the time this week's over, next week will be Christmas. So it's the week before Christmas, but the news is not slowing down. We've got a lot to go over, ladies. So I wanted to start off with Broadcom. They reported they beat the estimates. They upped their guidance. They announced, who the big mystery customer of a new $21 billion chip order came in. Their CEO gave an impassioned speech on why, people want custom ASIC and so forth. But yet their stock got punished. This is why I'm not a good stock investor. It makes no sense to me. Kate, can you make sense of this?
No, I can't either. So just to review here, Broadcom made headlines this week by this massive 21 billion custom chip order. And at the same time, they were, Broadcom CEO pushed back on the idea that only NVIDIA can win in AI, calling Google's TPU strategy a transactional move. So for me, I always feel like we're writing off Broadcom generally. And I think Broadcom as a whole has always been across the board, even with their, Raspberry Pis. I mean, they are a phenomenal group, Broadcom. And so I wouldn't write them out just yet. So, custom, who would have thought a custom chip when chips were first made? Who would have thought right now that we would be talking about custom chips? I mean, that is, this is why I think we will continue to go down custom chips path, and Broadcom is definitely moving in the right direction here.
Yeah. I have there's a little insight though about Broadcom's performance and what's going on. I think based on the reading I did, Wall Street basically feels that it's a little bit of a shell game because Broadcom is basically acting as a pass-through manufacturer. So they're taking Google's TPU designs, they're manufacturing them, and they're delivering full racks to Anthropic with no markup. So they're passing the costs directly through. So even though they beat earnings, their stock dropped because the investors are concerned. They're saying, well, you're not adding any markup. You beat earnings. So, is it evening out? So are you actually doing as well as you thought? Their margins are still great, but it seems that they are being punished for the benefit that they're passing along to Anthropic.
So I think there's a few things at play here, Hope. I think you hit on some of them. Number one, they are overly dependent right now today on Google as a customer because Google, they are the manufacturer of choice for Google's TPUs. And anytime your business is dependent on just one customer, it's a single point of failure. And so people are going to be cautious. Number two, I think you're right. They are serving as a pass-through distro, if you will, operating on razor thin margin there in this particular Anthropic order. I think that's why, and I always forget his name now, the CEO of Broadcom, uh, Hawk 10. It comes to me. You guys will be this old soon one day too. Don't worry. Hawk 10. I think this is why Hawk 10 was saying that this Google TPU thing is a transactional move. But what he's really saying is he's pushing clients to custom chip destiny because no one wants to put their fortune on someone else's stack, if you will. He thinks everybody's going to want to design their own chips that are customized for their unique use cases. And that Broadcom is happy to be the manufacturer of choice for these custom chips that you design. But using someone else's custom chips may be, okay for now, but is not where you want to be as this AI race explodes and continues to move forward. And so what he's looking to do there is broaden the base, not just Google. Now, they already have a huge deal with OpenAI. I forget for how many hundreds of billions of dollars over the next X years. But of course, that's contingent on OpenAI spending $1.5 trillion that they don't have today, anyway. So I do think that is a part of what's going on here. The other thing, though, in Broadcom's defense, look, they went out, they bought CA, they bought Symantec, they bought VMware. These are software, not hardware, software companies where you have better margins generally than you do on hardware. And they're basically cash cows, right? They are books of business that kind of they're cash cows. And that should really help with their cash flow and their margins. So I'm not quite sure, in light of all this, why they still deserve to, be lower. But and the funny thing is, I'm not a finance guy, and I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But if from what I read, if you look at what the experts on the street say, they all have it as a buy long term. Well, most of them have it as a buy long term, but yet the stock still got hit.
One other bit of nuance for this that I think could work long term in Broadcom's favor is, for the past 5 years, everyone's been talking about GPUs and building out for models, right? A lot of the models now are built. What they now need is performance per dollar on inference workloads. Inference is the future. Inference is everything at the moment. And these TPUs are optimized for the architecture that models like Claude.
No doubt. I mean, but Amazon has Trainium. That's their inference chip. Google has theirs. Rumor is Microsoft's going to have theirs. And I think that's where Hawk 10 is going, that inference is going to be the battleground, right? NVIDIA has a stranglehold on the GPU training market, if you will. But everyone's going to want their own inference chip to be a player because that is where the action's going to be.
Right. And they're betting on the idea that AI, it won't be like one size fits all. And I think that Broadcom is really well positioned for that at the end of the day. So
I agree. I mean, they seem to be the inference chip maker of choice, or the inference chip manufacturer of choice. I do think that long term, that's where Intel has to be playing too. Right? But there are others.
we're not finance. I'm not a finance person either, but hey, I'd go out and buy Broadcom.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I think
hey,
it's a
we're
good
not
idea.
giving investment advice, though. Please, you, at your own risk. The last thing we did. But, you know, there are some other plays in that inference chip. The Marvel is one. Micro, I forget, Micro something is another. But certainly Broadcom is a major player there. And it'll be interesting. But here's just one other thing I want to throw out at y'all. So this $21 billion order from Anthropic, all right, it's 21 billion. I think Anthropic could probably cover it. But there's a lot of deals on the books, especially, and we've spoken about this before, the OpenAI deals. You know, they pledged $1.5 trillion between AI data centers and AI chips. That, like in the case of Oracle and in the case of Broadcom, represent a significant amount of their booked revenue out there in the future. And if that doesn't happen, if there's a hiccup in the market or something doesn't work out right, that could come back and be that could drive these stock prices really into the ground.
It's the AI angst.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Because Anthropic. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's a big bet.
Yeah, but Anthropic commits $21 billion to Broadcom for TPUs. Anthropic has raised around $33 billion in funding. They're evaluated at around $180 billion. And this is from Google, Amazon, sovereign wealth funds, others, right? But Google is also Anthropic's cloud infrastructure provider, and they're manufacturing TPUs through Broadcom.
No, think about it. They're buying.
They're all in bed together.
Well, but no, it's a circle of money. It's the circle of, you know, I've said this before, back in the .com days, we were in a really bad contract with WorldCom, MCI WorldCom, for bandwidth. I think I was paying, not me personally, I had helped a company grow called Interliant. We were public company, big ASP. I think we were paying like $1,200 for a T1 line worth of bandwidth back in the day. And the going market now was $600 or $700. So we were paying twice what, but it was a contract we had signed a couple of years before. At the time, it seemed good. And this company came to us and said they were setting up a broadband trading commodity desk, and that they would buy our WorldCom. It's funny, Broadcom, WorldCom. They would buy our WorldCom bandwidth at $1,200, and through the magic of arbitrage and commodity, sell us back, in essence, the same amount of bandwidth for $700. And they, you know, and they could do it all day long, as much as we had. And I was the VP or SVP of BizDev, Corp Dev. We went down with my CEO and COO to, actually it was to Houston, to a company called Enron, because that was the company that promised us they could do it. And
the full spectrum of
you know, and I'll never forget, right? I sat here, the three of us were sitting, and there were these all Enron people around us, and this one would buy it from us, trade it to this one, trade it to that one, give it to this one, that one would go here, this one, and then this person would sell it back to me. I said, how do you do that? They said, we've been doing this in the commodities markets for a generation. We know how to do this. I said, okay. I mean, you know, it's Enron. They're a big company. They get the big E downstairs and I'll never forget. I walked out of there. I asked the CEO of our company, Herb Rebar, who was an old cell phone guy, telecommunication guy. I said, Herb, how did they do that? I just, you know, I feel stupid. He said, either they're the smartest people in the house or they're the biggest crooks. And as it turned out, right? Yeah, that's how that turned out. So, you know, this thing will implode upon itself or it won't. I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah. But hey, Broadcom, I mean, having all the different, other, cash
Broadcom's a
cows.
solid business. Yeah. I mean, between the software, and they still, don't forget, even the big public cloud providers, as well as most data center providers, it's still Broadcom that is powering a lot of that infrastructure, not the CPUs or GPUs in a particular server, mind you, but the networking gear and everything. It's a
I mean,
fantastic business.
I feel like they're everywhere. Every time I turn around, it's something Broadcom, and
No doubt about it. All right.
They'll be happy to hear you say that.
Well, look, I'll just end this with, as I said before, Kate, Hope, and I, we don't have a horse in the race. We're not here touting stocks or telling you what to buy, or you do what you think is best. But we're going to take a break here on the gang. We're going to come back and talk about, I call it data center NIMBY. You're watching TechStrong, gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
Hey, everyone. We're back here on the gang. So, interesting, amidst the $5 trillion to $8 trillion planned data center, AI data center, AI factories, as you may call them, build out over the next couple of years, we're now seeing some pushback. Some of the pushback is very kind of local, the typical kind of NIMBY stuff. Oh, you didn't say you were building it in my backyard, right? Go put it over there where those people are, where those people aren't, in the woods, in space, undersea, just not anywhere near me. And we're seeing more and more of this, the latest being a city over in Arizona rejected a planned data center because of that local pushback. And there's other reasons for it too. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these AI data centers aren't bringing the jobs. Yes, there's initial jobs in construction and bringing it online, but once they are online, these are not labor intensive. There's not manufacturing plants or something like that you have a lot of workers. But on top of that now, an environmental group has asked Congress for a pause on these projects because the environmental potential for catastrophe is, they claim, not something that's trivial, right? It's primarily around, well, what are you using for energy? Are we going to rush nuclear on all of a sudden because we need it desperately? Are we diverting water? Are we going to fire up coal plants to do these things? What are we doing? What are we doing for cooling? If we're not using water to cool, are we using chemicals? Are those chemicals being disposed of properly? There's all kinds of love canal scenarios here that they're forcing on Congress. Generally, we're past the spotted owl phase, I think, of the government stepping in on these things. But and look, the government has a stake in it too. So I don't know what the likelihood. I mean, ultimately, I guess it winds up in courts. But I mean, our Congress doesn't really show much of a backbone to get involved in these things. Hope, Kate, what do you think?
Speaking of government and speaking of the courts, there was an executive order on December 11th that is setting up a showdown over data centers. It is the AI litigation task force at the Justice Department that will sue states and directs commerce to potentially withhold federal broadband funding from states that don't comply. So this is them saying, this is the new version of eminent domain, I guess, right? So Kirsten Sinema, she is the person who went to Chandler, Arizona to basically tell them, hey, you need to approve this now while you still have local control, because if you don't, we're going to override you anyway. So this is a big fight. And one of the other interesting things about this fight is it's become very bipartisan, because it's unified not over ideology, but utility bills. So residents in these areas are probably going to see their power bills jump anywhere from 15 to 20% over a few years, when they're not going to get any of the benefits, really, no direct benefits from it.
And I still don't understand. I mean, and help me here. I don't understand why it is that it's passed on to consumers, the expense at the end of the day. Can someone help explain that to me? Like the cost for energy? Why don't we pass it back on to the company?
Well, one of the reasons is because it's part of the grid, right? So this is not something that is just localized to the data center. So where I live, it's Duke Energy, right? If Duke Energy has to build out, those build out costs are not necessarily directly billed back to what caused the build out, but they are peanut butter spread across a whole region. So it's definitely a spatial mismatch in distribution of benefit and burden. And that's part of what's driving the backlash.
It's not like this is a dedicated circuit that you flip on for a data center, right? What the utility looks at, and from what I've been told, what the utility looks at is what is its total capacity to generate power, and then the cost per watt, megawatt, gigawatt, what have you, is based upon that, right? How much are they totally generating versus, and so what do we charge? Now, there are some of these data centers that are, or factories, or whatever you want to call them, that are supposedly being designed to have their own contained nuclear reactors in a container or something, right? So that they don't go on the
in their
grid.
backyard.
Well, yes, no, who wants those in your backyard is right. But for the most part, these monster data centers are going to be on the power grid, and consumers will pay their share. And, in another era with another Congress, you might see legislation that says, hey, for the good of America, we're making these companies, these data center companies, bear the cost of that, and everybody's electric bills go down as a result. But in today's bizarro world where corporate greed is king, we all bear the cost for these data center companies to be able to come on. And the flip side is, they're bringing you jobs, they're bringing you this, they're bringing you that, and they're not. And that's why, like the city in Arizona said, when you do this, it doesn't add up. It's not weighed out. So it is, and then there's the whole environmental factor too.
Even with water, water for this is, gosh, that's really a critical commodity, especially in Arizona. I remember when Intel was there and the big fight with Intel in Arizona. So
you look at where they're building these, Arizona, West Texas. right out Abilene way and out that way. Um, in the Midwest, generally, like Ohio and some of the places where they're building there, they have a little bit more water resources. It makes more sense. But that's also why they're looking at building them in the bottom of the sea and up in space and everywhere else, because, of the heat issue, or temperatures issue. But here's another, from a legal point of view, Hope, you're right. This is coming to a showdown, right? States' rights versus federal. Federal government does have rights over interstate commerce. And they'll probably say that these data centers are part of interstate commerce because, they transmit data across state lines. But the issue is, can this be done by executive order without an act of Congress? And that underlies a lot of what the Trump administration has done. Congress has actually done very little to approve a lot of these executive orders. And again, there have been a lot of the courts that say, no, this is an action that is reserved for Congress. And absent a congressional order, it can't be done by fiat. Now, to date, the Supreme Court has not come down on this the way many thought. Though under the previous administration, they were very clear about it. But I guess the previous administration didn't appoint 3 or 4 of the judges on the panel. So, but, this is not the way the system was designed.
At the end of the day, I hate that, again, we seem to be flipping the bill for AI. Like we are, and we are personally flipping the bill over and over again. And it just, forget about even the monstrosity that's going up in our backyards, but we're paying for it. And it's not right. So, in my opinion.
No, as they're saying in a lot of places, it's not what we voted for, right? And so we'll see how this plays out. Ultimately, I think, look, these AI data centers got to pay for themselves. And if the everyman is going to be footing the bills in the form of higher electric and higher utility bills, that's going to make for a real problem. Houston, we got a problem. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be interesting because $8 trillion is a lot of money, guys. Yep. Not to mention that the IBM CEO says that even you look at that $8 trillion buyout, the $8 trillion build out, and there's just no way it could be profitable, right? Given money's generated and everything. But who am I to argue? Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to talk about Alice Unchained. That's right. Our first Techstrong Gang concert. No, it's not. Stay tuned.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
All right, everyone, we're back. No, we're not really doing a concert. But I just wanted to get an idea of how many of you out there remember Alice Unchained. Truth be told, it was a little before my time, or a little after my time, excuse me.
But I remember.
But yeah, I would imagine, Kate, might be your time. But we're not really talking about music. We're talking about something called Alice from IBM. Don't ask me what Alice means, but Hope you may know and tell us more.
Yes. So IBM Research announced Project Alice at Newer IPS 2025, and Alice is agentic logic for incident and code bug elimination. So It's part of IT operations, and the estimate is IT outages cost over $14,000 a minute. So finding the bug, finding the problem, is a big deal. So what is interesting about Alice and different from how others have approached the problem is they are using sequential multi-agent approach. So instead of um, one AI trying to handle everything, there are three specialized agents and they're working like a relay team. So one is incident analysis, another is code context that builds a graph to show how microservices connect. It's basically giving you the landscape. And then a code analysis agent comes in, and this is powered by IBM that shows you where the bug is in the code base and gives you an issue in GitHub. So the major point about this, though, is this is still basically in a lab. This is still being tested. This is not in the wild. This is not available for purchase. And with some of the caveats around it, it probably could be, let's say, 2 to 3 years before it's publicly available. But it is an interesting way of attacking the problem. So companies like Datadog, PagerDuty, they're going to be sitting up and paying attention because this is going to offer them potentially some competition.
Oh, I would think so. Just a silly question. I never made up names like this. Do you think they started with Alice, or they said, what are we doing? How can we make it spell something cool?
I think
And then
somebody
they said,
probably
oh, I
had
need an
a
E at
grandma.
the end.
No,
They would answer somebody's grandma.
for me, when I saw the name Alice, I thought immediately of Bob, Alice and Bob. So now we just need Bob. Alice, for networking security, Alice used to hold the private key. Bob held the public key. Eve was for eavesdropping. I mean, there was, and so when I thought, oh, Project Alice, my first thought was, oh, we just need Bob. I literally thought it was
Or
a shot
quantum
back
theory, Bob and
to,
Alice.
to Alice and Bob.
But yeah.
So I am sure they didn't intend that, but that's where my head went. And for me, when I think about this, I personally think it's gonna. I think just like Vibe that we thought would take a heck of a lot longer. I think agentic AI for the win. I think this is going to come around a heck of a lot sooner, especially if IBM is already announcing it as a person who worked for IBM for over 20 years. That they are already announcing it is really, really cool. They're announcing how it's going around it. It goes out to GitHub, and this is phenomenal. And a person who had to design, SOCs, not system on a chip, but security operations centers, when we started bringing in network logs, and it just was unmanageable from a human perspective. Now we started to add applications, database, blah, 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 endpoints. All of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, what the heck? We're never, we couldn't detect an anomaly regardless. I mean, we had 100 people on our team. So this is a really smart way. I think hey, I love Alice. So she's not around yet, but I love her.
Right. But one smart thing that I think they're doing, it feels like a strategic bet on long-term interoperability, is they are using the MCP from Anthropic. So once it's built, once it's in the enterprise, it should be able to connect with any external models and tools that support MCP. So they are, it's proprietary tech, but supposedly it will play well with everything.
And for it to go into GitHub and for MCP, I mean, that's, hello IoT, right? I mean, MCP uses IoT. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So
Yes,
sorry.
I do. So in my mind, though, and Kate, no disrespect to your time at IBM and the Big Blue, but IBM has a way of announcing these things, and they're visionary and cool as heck and exciting, and it's like, wow. And then a funny thing happens on the way to market.
It's true. I mean, we had a whole Watson for QRadar, and no, I'll give you that, Alan. It didn't go.
Yeah, but I mean, but I love the idea of it, and what they're trying to do here is the right thing. I think another aspect of it is this whole multi-agent thing, right? This is the world we're going to live in, right? To go all Carl Sagan on you, we're going to have billions and billions of agents, right? And so our platforms, us as people, are going to need to learn to live in this multi-agent system where we're going to have multiple agents, some of them overlapping, right? Some not. They're all going to talk to each other, whether it's through MCP or A to A or what have you. But that's the world we're going to live in. They're digital coworkers. And it's not just one of them. And I think wrapping our heads around that, because, and again, we've discussed this on shows here before. Are these agents ephemeral? They do one thing and then die and go away and get recycled? Are they perpetual, persistent?
Well, if you watch Murderbot from Apple, that would be a no.
Yes. So. Well, I didn't watch that yet, but now I will. But I mean, so this to me is sort of the great unknown as we move into this multi-agent world. And I do agree with you. I think agentic AI is coming fast.
One other point, sort of a counterpoint. So Google also released a research study this week, and they tested 180 configurations across 5 different multi-agent architectures, and they found more agents don't necessarily mean better performance. And for sequential reasoning tasks, the very same scenario, the very thing Alice does with the relay race architecture, all multi-agent variants degraded performance by 39 to 70% compared to single agents. Now, one other thing to consider, you have these agents, these 3 agents working in sequence. What if the first agent makes a wrong assumption? The other agents, as they are currently designed, are not made to validate or correct assumptions. It just magnifies. So now it gets to the SRE. They're a junior SRE. They take it at face value and they chase this until they find that, it's bogus. A senior SRE is going to spend time validating it. Are you really, how much do you gain?
So basically this whole, the whole false positive is affecting agentic AI as well. That's good to know. That's great to know. It's not just with humans.
So
it does not escape.
I view that as growing pains, though. We'll figure that out.
Yes, I think they will.
First, you got to get a single agent working, then start thinking of it in this multi-agent world. They'll put kind of the rules there in place. But the question is, how fast do you figure it out and reiterate, right? It's just like DevOps on steroids. Deploy, feedback loop, reiterate, deploy, feedback, and if you have sort of ephemeral agents, you could do that really quickly.
Yeah, so Alice is not out of the game yet.
Alice is not out of the game. Now, I didn't think of Alice Unchanged, nor did I think of, wasn't it Ted and Alice and Bob and someone else?
It was Alice and Bob and Eve. And if you think about it, Eve was eavesdropping, so that was cute. Mallory, you had they do. Carol became Identity. They actually had the whole alphabet of characters as we grew the stack. Yeah. So you are remembering correctly, but Alice and Bob were the first.
There you go. So, but I thought of Alice the Waitress, the TV show.
Oh, I thought of the Brady Bunch Alice
Oh,
too.
she was one of my favorites, Alice, on the Brady Bunch. For those of you who may not remember, but you're a real Gen Xer, huh, Kate?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Hey, I'll admit I was a big Marsha crush.
Hey, and so was I.
Really? I think we all liked Marsha. She was cool, except when she got that thing with her nose and she didn't like it. Anyway, I can see we're degrading here. Let's pull this back. It's going to be an interesting, but you know what? We're about out of time. Hope, Kate, thank you so much for coming on today. As always, I thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoy your Tuesday. As usual, we've got a lot of TechStrong TV. And it's the week before Christmas, everyone. Things could be worse. You're watching TechStrong, gang.